Okay, everybody, we are live streaming. I'm Brian. I'm going to be the man taking care of all the technical stuff. And we have our good friends, Chi and Thomas, here to answer all of our questions.
Hey, what's going on?
What up?
Some of you guys may recognize Thomas from past Q&As and from all of our videos. And you may even recognize Chi from a couple of videos that he's done on our Big Al's VOD channel as well. So they're here today, our aquatics experts, to answer all your questions. So I know you guys are anxious. I know you guys have a ton of questions you want answered. But before we get into it, just to introduce everybody properly, I'm hoping that maybe Thomas and Chi can both tell us a little bit briefly of their hobby experience. So we'll start with you, Thomas. Tell us a bit about your experience in fish keeping over the years.
I have been keeping fish since the ripe age of somewhere around 7. I think we had our first aquarium at home. Lots of experience with tons of different species of fish over the years. Cichlids, South Americans, live bears, tetras, plecos, oddball catfish, all the way up to reefing, huge into corals, love corals, clams, all kinds of stuff. Not big on the breeding so much. I have bred fish, but it's mostly been unintentionally because they just do that when they're happy. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been probably 4 or so that I can remember. Started with live bears, guppies, goldfish, and whatnot. Moved on to cichlids, reef tanks. But I have a special interest now in majority African cichlids and flower horns, the hybrids. Some people don't like hybrids. I have a thing for them. But yeah, I'm always playing around with different fish, different tanks, whatnot, shrimps.
So tons of experience between you guys. So that's good. So guys, we're going to jump right into it. I know we have a few people watching now. Anyone who has questions, go ahead and leave them in the sidebar to the right of the screen. You can leave all your questions there, and I will translate them to, well, translate, you guys speak English too, but I will convey them.
Translate them from text to voice.
Yes. And our host with the most will answer them for you. So guys, you can go ahead anytime you're ready and leave us some comments. Anyone?
Comments? So, what do you think of the corals?
We actually, while we're waiting for some questions, we have some really nice looking artificial coral that we've just brought in. It just hit our website. So if you check it out, I believe it's under decorations and then coral replicas. Is really vibrant. That's not even like a reef spec light. That's a nice LED light from Aquatic Light for freshwater, and it looks phenomenal. So for those of you out there who want corals that aren't gonna ever pass away, or maybe you're freshwater but you want it to look saltwater, that stuff's a great option.
All right, guys, so we have a couple questions here already.
Awesome.
Our first question from Derek Breeley. How long should fish be in quarantine before adding to the main tank?
That, I think we've covered that question in the past, but I'll give you my breakdown on quarantine real quick, and then, Chief, if you have anything to add on, let me know. Quarantine is going to depend a lot upon the condition of the fish when you get it, whether or not the fish is captive bred or wild caught. Whenever you're dealing with wild caught specimens or specimens coming from, let's say, conditions that you have absolutely no idea what they were like, my recommendation for quarantine is at least 6 to 8 weeks. That gives you enough time with that fish to identify any potential issues and then treat them. Now the key thing is, if your fish shows any symptoms and you treat them, you should tack on, in my opinion, another 4 to 6 weeks after the treatment looks successful, because some things will pop up again within that time frame, and it would really suck if you took your fish that were in quarantine that you thought were effectively treated and then put them in your main tank, and then you crop that problem up in your main tank as well. So quarantine for fish, in my opinion, 6 to 8 weeks. If you do detect a problem, treat that fish, and then give it 4 to 6 weeks with 0 symptoms before you add them to your main display.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, we have a pretty good video on Video on Demand that goes over the quarantine setup and process, so we'll link that for you in the comments to the side. But we'll move on to our next question. Very important question from Lucas Aquariums. He asks, Thomas, why did you cut your hair?
Why did I cut my hair? I'm one of those people who need to change things all the time. I'm actually guilty of that in all aspects of life. So whether or not it's with my aquariums or my vivariums or my physical appearance, I've shaved my beard several times since the conception of me being a part of the Big Al's video team, and I've cut my hair a bunch of times, and I'm probably gonna cut it again soon because this is kind of, I can't even do anything with this. It's just kind of meh. But if you prefer it to be really long, maybe I'll just grow it out again for you.
I vote for mullet.
Oh God.
I second that.
Mullet fish man.
Okay, guys, next question. Not one that we can really answer, but Elvis Bear asks, will you ever have a Big Al store in Red Deer, Alberta? Unfortunately, we can't really say yes or no to that. It depends if...
The answer is, do you want to start a franchise in Red Deer, Alberta?
In which case, the answer is yes, we will open a Big Al's there.
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know what the future will bring. If there's any hobbyists who are interested in joining the Big Al's team and opening a franchise of their own, well, there's always an option.
Yeah,
so
shout out to us.
Absolutely. Okay, our next question from Ewan Marshall. He says, I heard on a forum that in a planted tank you shouldn't vacuum the gravel as the plants benefit from the fish waste and uneaten food. Is this true?
Two sides to this coin.
Yeah, to a point, I'll say, but I'll still stick to regular maintenance. But it's just when you vacuum, you could uproot a lot of plants, but I don't know what they do benefit from like the extra nutrients and the waste because they would break down the waste, I guess. But to a point, it could.
It depends. It really depends on how you've set the tank up. But in general, the mulm that ends up building up, the physical waste, the plants can't really do a ton with that. It's the chemical nutrients in the water that are going to benefit the plants the most. Things like phosphorus and nitrates, different elements that are in liquid state rather than a physical form. And all that mulm that builds up down there, you do want to get it out if the substrate you're using allows for you to do so. Because if you've done something like used like a... But if you have something that's a little bit more on the porous side that you can gravel vacuum, there's no harm in doing it, provided that you do not go close to the plants, because you'll actually potentially destroy root structure going through the gravel to the bottom of the tank, because those plants are going to send out roots just about everywhere. So you space, but a lot of displays will have like a large open section where they've basically created like an island of plants, this big kind of, sandy pit, and then another island of plants. That part in the middle, keeping that clean is of great benefit. You won't have a mulm build up there. You're not going to have excess nutrients in the tank that are, far away from the plant root structure where they can't actually access it. But in general, I would say most people don't even bother, and you're not going to see a massive problem with nutrients in a heavily planted tank anyways.
I like removing like the leaves or like parts of the plant that are starting to die.
Yeah.
So manually removing it's probably good, better than leaving it in.
Yeah, you can do that with a net, basically.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So another question, actually about our stores, and Thomas, you may be able to answer this better than anyone.
Cool.
Will Big Al's offer store credit or cash if a customer brings in healthy fish or coral? So if people can't take care of their pet anymore, they want to do something responsible with it, can they bring it into a Big Al's?
The answer is yes. However, every store is different. What they, like for instance, if you're breeding cichlids and you've got a whole bunch and you want to trade them in for credit, which is usually what they'd offer you for fish that are brought in, you'll always want to call in advance to make sure that they have room for those fish, and also to make sure that that is something that they're actually looking for. So a lot of the time, our stores will take fish off your hands that you're just donating because, let's say you tore your tank down and you want to make sure they go somewhere and there's nobody else that'll take them. We'll help you responsibly rehome your fish. However, if you are looking for a credit, call in advance. Make sure that they're prepared for you to come. They only do credits during the weekdays. They don't do it on the weekends just because of the traffic in the store. There's too many people. So during the week, call in advance and then they'll hook you up.
All right, good to know. So our next question from Luke. He asks, I got a piece of driftwood from my local store. He's in the UK. And it's in my new tank, which I'm cycling, fishless.
Nice.
And there's 4 snails in my tank. I didn't put them in there. Is that okay?
I would remove them.
Yeah, it depends on the snail. Most likely it's probably Malaysian trumpet snails.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. They breed
Like crazy.
Like crazy, yeah.
A lot of snail species do breed very rapidly, and they're very difficult to get rid of if you don't do it when you first see them. So if you're planning to ever have plants, it's hard for me to say because I can't see the snails you're looking at.
Yeah.
But a lot of snails will eat plants, and if you're planning to keep plants, the last thing you want to have to deal with is a snail infestation. I would get rid of them, but if you do have them in the future and you do have plants and they're causing a problem, assassin snails work really well to control snail populations, as well as some loach species. I use dwarf Siamese boattail loaches work really well. But yeah, I would get rid of them.
To your question, you have another follow-up. Don't be afraid to ask it.
Yeah.
Any questions you have, they'll be happy to help you out with. So next, another question from Derek Breeley. He says, my tap water is high in nitrates, 50 parts per million. Any way to bring that down besides an RO system?
Effectively? Not really. There are medias you can use to help pull nitrates out. But if you've got a lot of nitrate in tap water, you've got to pre-filter it because the media is not going to last. Whereas an RO filter, you can put a ton of water through, and it's meant to handle it in that capacity. If you were to buy like a Nitrosorb or something and run your tap water through that, A, it's not going to work effectively just pushing water through it in one pass, and B, it's not going to last long because it's really not designed to handle large water capacities like that. Those medias are really designed to pull out small amounts of nitrates over a prolonged period of time rather than a lot of nitrate through water that's passing through it in an instant. So unfortunately, I would say you're probably best off pre-filtering water with an RODI system. I can't think of a better way to do it.
This will be a constant battle. Every water change.
Well, the thing is, if your water change has nitrates, like the water you're using to replace the water in your tank, even if you had like 40 parts per million nitrates in your tank and you're changing it out with water that's 20, your 50% water change is only 25% effective.
Yeah.
So it's an uphill battle, and you'll never get below 20 parts per million. It's impossible, which isn't technically bad. 20 is fine, but pristine water is even better.
Okay, guys, good. Let's see. The next one is Luke asks you, what are both of your favorite fish, his or stingrays?
Yeah, stingrays are pretty rad. What would you say yours is, Chi?
At the moment, it's a toss-up between the flowerhorn and the arowana, but I'm currently keeping a flowerhorn and not an arowana, so I'll say flowerhorn. Just the personality is great. That thing follows me, plays around, ferocious eater.
We have a lot of fun with that guy around
we
the
have
office.
tons of fun, and the colors are beautiful.
We've been bit a few times.
We've been bit a few. I've bled.
He has a habit of jumping up out of the tank to grab whatever's above the water. So if you're walking by and you're trying to feed him and you're not paying attention, you get nipped.
He's like a little puppy with no fur and fins.
He's fun.
And scales.
Scary, but
scary but fun. Yeah.
Mine for a very, very long time is probably going to be my favorite fish till I'm long gone is arowana, Asian arowana specifically. I've always been a massive fan of the crossbacks, and red-tailed golds are beautiful. The blues are beautiful.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. They're crazy expensive though. So instead of buying one, which I didn't have the money to do at the time, because who's just got like $3,000 lying around to drop on a pet fish? I have one tattooed on my back. So I've got an arowana. It's just not alive.
Well, it is on your back.
That was the only way I could be like, this fish will last forever.
All right, guys, a question from Carlos. He asks, what are good tank mates for a dwarf puffer in a 40-gallon planted tank?
More dwarf puffish?
I was going to say, not a lot. They are nippy. Yeah, more dwarf puffers potentially, but they can even get a little nippy with each other. Yeah, unless you keep them really well fed. Armored catfish, pleco species would be all right. Hoplo catfish might be all right, as long as you're not keeping it like brackish, which would be not good. Anything that can deal with getting nipped, which is not a lot of things. It's kind of a pain. You might be okay with things like zebra danios that are really fast.
Yeah, 'cause it's too
because
quick, yeah.
the puffer can't chase them down, and they're very quick moving fish that don't really have a rest period. They just always move around. So that might be another good tank mate for you. But you got to be careful because they are nippy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if things get nipped, it's just the nature of it.
All right, so our next question from Lucas Aquariums. He asks, is having algae a bad thing, or is it just not appealing to the eye?
That depends on the type of algae. Realistically, it's like a thin green film, harmless. If you're talking about green water, it's harmless. There are bacterial types of algae like cyanobacteria and stuff. In high quantities, it's not good to have it in the tank. I can't remember specifically which species are toxic, but there are some that can be toxic in high quantities or if ingested. So it's better not to have those. But anything like turf algae,
Yeah.
blackbeard algae, green algae of any kind, not a big deal. It's just ugly.
Well,
It's not going to hurt anything.
I have some buddies that grow algae on rocks
On
for
purpose.
that on purpose for that look. So for their cichlid tanks, and then a lot of fish will graze on it
Yeah.
as well. So it
African
depends.
cichlids
Yeah.
will a lot of the time. And it has nutrient uptake properties. Long story short, if you're growing algae in your tank, you probably have higher nutrient content, like maybe high nitrates or something. The algae is going to consume that. So between light and having that food source there, you're going to grow a lot of algae. So if you're looking to reduce it, keep your nitrates lower. Use a phosphate absorbing media to help pull out any phosphate from the water. Phosphate gets into the water through fish food. Even after fish eat food and defecate, you still end up with the phosphates and nitrates, etc. So pulling that out will help, and then reducing the photo period. If your water's pristine but you're still getting algae, chances are it's either getting natural sunlight or just too much light in general. So you can drop the photo period back a bit, and that will help.
So another Luke here below also replied, and he said, not appealing to the eyes, but it is actually beneficial. So it sounds like what you guys were talking about, it can be beneficial.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, great. Next up, we have @Reef says, I love your videos.
Yay!
So that's always nice to hear. We work really hard on those every single week, so glad to hear you guys love them, and we'll keep them coming. Now let's see, the next question from @Reef is, what do you think about Zeo?
Like Zeovit?
It just says ZEO, Zeo.
Zeocarb?
So hey,
No, Zeovit or Zeolite?
it says
I bet you it's
Zeolite.
Zeolite.
Zeo system. And do you think calcium reactor or dosing method?
I personally haven't used the Zeo system. The basic concept of it makes sense, but from what I've seen with people running Zeo systems, you're basically stripping the water to as pristine as possible to the point where it's nutrient devoid. And I have run tanks, specifically a reef tank that had a nutrient deficiency problem before, and I actually had to add nutrients back to the water, like physically add nitrates and small trace amounts of phosphorus, and it's difficult to balance. So rather than just letting a system essentially equalize and get used to where your nitrates and phosphates are going to be based on your feeding habits, and then compensate via water changes and through protein. Inhabitants don't starve, so it causes beneath it. Long term because there's less you have to do to it less often, and the calcium reactor media will go further for you without spending as much money. Liquids can be expensive unless you're mixing them yourself using powdered products, but not everybody wants to do that either.
I do see here we're having a couple of connectivity problems. Not sure what it is. We're still streaming, but I know a couple people say they're waiting for the video to jump back in. So before we jump into any questions, we're just going to give it a sec.
Cool.
See if it comes back up.
Should I check on my phone?
Sure, you can do that if you'd like.
I'm just going to see if our connection's running.
No, it's working. We're just really still.
That's probably a black screen.
Okay, yeah, we're back up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we're back up.
Perfect.
All right, everybody. Sorry about that. I don't know what the issue is with connectivity, but we're back up and running.
Was that question that I just answered effectively streamed?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe he got most of that point out. I'm not sure if you guys heard everything he was saying, but yeah, perfect. People are back. Great. So we're all good to go. So listen, if you want Thomas to kind of repeat some of the stuff he just said, we can get him to do that. So if you have any follow-up to that question, ask us again, and we'll see if Thomas can kind of jump back into it. Sorry about that, Thomas.
It's all good. I like talking.
Works out for everybody then. All right, so I think everyone's back in now. Okay, fantastic. So we'll jump on to our next question for now, and like I said, at Reef, if you have any other questions or follow-up, feel free to ask them, and we'll jump back into it. So let's see here. The next question was from Stella Betas. Is it possible to regrow an Amazon sword that is rotting?
Have you ever had to do that?
Well, it cut off the rotting, but it depends how much of it's still alive.
It really does. The question is, where is it rotting from? If we're talking like a leaf here and there is rotting, remove them and remove as much of the rotting plant as possible, and then try to replant whatever is still doing well and still firm. But if it's the main root structure at the bottom that's rotting, it's almost impossible for it to come back. It's very difficult. So it depends, and replant it, but otherwise it might just be toast.
All right, fair enough, guys. So everyone remember that we are getting to the questions in sequence. So if you ask the question we haven't answered it yet, don't worry, we will get to it. We're just answering them as we go. So the next question, and this one is about medications. So we'll ask the question. You guys can, give us any opinions you do have, but our other aquatics expert, Chris, who's been on a few other live chats with us, he wasn't able to be in today. So if you have a question that for some reason we don't feel we can answer, don't feel comfortable answering today, we will absolutely get that answer from our other aquatics expert and get back to you guys. So I'll ask you, and you guys can, give whatever opinion you have currently. So Cole asks, what are your top 3 medications to have on hand in treating potentially sick fish?
Solid question. The 3 things that I think most people should probably just have on hand, just in case something happens, is, and it depends on what kind of aquarium you have, but so forgive me, but aquarium salt, Melifix, and Pimafix. Melifix is known, first off, none of those 3 things are actually medications. They're a step that you can take before having to truly medicate with like an antibiotic or an antifungal. But your Melifix is going to be an antibacterial agent, as well as helping to heal with damaged fins, any damaged scales, body wounds that you can physically see. Pimafix is very to increase essentially the osmosis of the fish's body and the surrounding water, so it can aid in the process of healing by speeding up that osmosis. It also helps them by sticking, that it coaxes them to produce extra slime coat, which can help with any external parasites. So if I had to say you should have these 3 things on a good jump off point. When it comes to treating actual problems that fish already have that are full blown, it's very difficult to medicate effectively. Fish are very fragile, so you'd have to go through a quarantine process to be safe unless everything in the tank's affected, and then find the appropriate medication for that exact ailment if it can be properly diagnosed. But yeah. How do you feel?
For example, like with ick or something, you can throw in the aquarium salt, raise the temperature a bit, speed up the life cycle of the bacteria or the infection there to get rid of it a little quicker. But yeah, Thomas covered pretty much what I would have said.
I talk too much. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right, and so that question kind of applies. Stella Betas, you had actually asked the same kind of question. She asked if she was to make a fish emergency kit, what are the best medicines to always have on hand? So I think that also applies to that question as well.
I can add more to that emergency kit, because this is something I gotta like make a little blog post or something and post it up, because people always ask what they should have on hand, like what's gonna go wrong. One of the things everybody's emergency kit for their fish should include is a battery-operated air pump, because if you have a power outage, the first thing that's going to happen is your fish are going to start to lose oxygen because there's no water movement. So battery-operated air pump has saved so many aquariums in power outages. And battery-operated air pumps can usually last many hours off a single set of batteries, and if you have a backup set of batteries there too, you're laughing.
It's always good to have a quarantine tank.
Yeah.
5 gallon, 10 gallon, depending.
But yeah, battery-operated air pump, those three things, aquarium salt, Melafix, Pimafix, like they go a long way. If you can find yourself like a little uninterrupted power supply for a computer, so it's basically a battery that plugs into the wall, and when the power goes out, it gives power to whatever's hooked up to it. That can work really well if you have fish like discus or something that require a heater, and if the temperature goes too low, they're definitely not going to survive. That would definitely help as well, but that's a little bit more pricey, and I wouldn't say 100% necessary. Most people's homes don't leak heat like crazy or whatever. So, but yes, battery-operated air pump. If you don't own one and you care about your fish, get one. I don't care if you've got a bowl or a 15 billion gallon tank.
It's better than blowing through a straw.
How many gallons of water are in the ocean? It is. I've done that. I've had to do that. And
or swirl.
yeah, or take your bucket and constantly fill it full of water and
Yeah.
dump it back. It's not fun. Battery-operated air pump.
Cool. All right, guys. So hopefully for Cole and for Stella, that answers your question. You and we'll move on to your next question. He says, I quite recently set up a new tank about 4 months ago, and I have quite a few fish, 15 small tetras, and every week I test with my API Master Freshwater Test Kit. Everything always comes out 0, including nitrates. Is the test kit dodgy, or is there simply no nitrates, ammonia, and nitrate? The test kit is well within the date.
Well, the tank could be planted and it's pulling a lot of the nitrates out, but there should still be traces of nitrate, no? Or because with tetras, I just assume planted tank.
Yeah. Tetras also have a very small bioload.
Yeah.
So if you're not overfeeding and all the food gets eaten by the tetras, it will take a while for even 15 tetras in a decent volume of water to produce enough waste that you're going to see a large reading. You may just have that like little sweet spot where the amount of waste being produced by your fish isn't enough to essentially register on your nitrate side yet. They're probably still producing ammonia. Your filter's likely taking that ammonia and converting it, but it's just such small amounts versus the volume of water. You're not getting it, registering on your test kit. If you have live plants, that makes even more sense because they will pull out nitrates. They will suck them up as fast as they go in if you've got the correct ratio of CO2 to lighting to nutrients, which doesn't mean you have to have, heavy lighting, heavy CO2, and heavy nutrients. It just means that it could just be in that perfect little balance where you've got just enough light, just enough CO2 in the water, and just enough nutrient that your plants are pulling it all out as fast as it goes in.
Okay. Ewan, hopefully that answered your question, but as always, feel free to follow up with us. Elvis Bear asks us, can you do a video on how to set up your first saltwater tank, please? Which we are, it's in the works.
It is.
We're in the process. It's just such a complicated process to film. The process of setting up a saltwater tank.
Oh, yeah, it takes time.
It takes time, and to shoot it and put together a good video on it takes time. So we are working on it. You will see one in the near future. So don't worry about that.
What I'm kind of struggling with when it comes to that video is everybody there's so many ways to set up a saltwater tank. I could set up a saltwater tank very similarly to how I set up a freshwater tank. But I don't necessarily think that's what everybody wants to see. So we're trying to figure out how we want to set up the tank. We don't want to go so massive and so complex that it's a $20,000 aquarium that, the average person isn't going to be able to relate to or want to spend money on or purchase for themselves. Because that's like, who am I helping, really? My ego? So instead, I want to take it a little bit more on the, family-friendly version, because I'm sure popular Disney movies are going to come out soon and everybody's going to go through this. I got to have certain Disney character names in my aquarium. And you like how I avoided that? And I want to be able to provide something that's going to tailor more to those people. So I'm still in the process of, picking out what size tank we're going to do and what equipment we're going to use to try to make it more family friendly so that everybody can kind of get a piece of the saltwater pie. But yeah, it is coming. We'll definitely do it, and I'm sure it'll be worth the wait. I'm hoping it's worth the wait.
I'm sure
if
it
I
will be.
disappoint you guys, I'm going to be really upset with myself.
All right, so our next question is, do red-tailed black sharks deserve their bad reputation?
Yes. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They do. They're
Have you,
terrible.
what experiences have you guys had with them?
They can be mean, especially if they're the only one in the tank. And if they're not the only one in the tank, they can be very mean towards each other. First off, people don't realize how big they get. They're a pretty decent-sized fish, full-grown. The largest one I've seen is probably, like in person, is probably about 8 inches, which isn't massive, but it's a barrel-shaped fish. They're like quite large around, and they're very, I don't know how to put this. They like food, and if there are other things around them that like food, they don't like those things.
And those things won't get food.
Yeah, so they have a habit of bullying other fish. They have a habit of taking little nips out of the sides of even larger fish in the tank with them that for whatever reason sets them off. I've seen community tanks with red-tailed black sharks, with ruby sharks, just be totally fine. Community-friendly fish doesn't seem to bother anyone, doesn't seem to bother smaller fish. And then, you know, I've seen other ones that just terrorize tanks. Put it in a tank full of cichlids, and cichlids are, you know, getting their fins munched or having little spots on the side where scales have been nipped off. So it's hit and miss.
I want to take the chance though.
Yeah. If you really like red-tailed black sharks, try one for sure. Just be cautious with what kind of tank mates it's going in with, and you know, just be prepared to have to moderate the situation. They're very pretty fish when they're full grown. They're very cool. They're mean. They're cool.
And mean.
So I guess that sums it up. They do deserve that terrible reputation. Okay, so our next question from Scott. He says, I'm building a 60 by 18 by 26 tall, 120 gallon reef tank. I want to keep soft and maybe LPS coral, but I'm not sure which lights to use. Which specific product do you guys recommend for best results?
I'm a lighting nut, so I don't know how to do things like moderately with LED lighting and corals. I'm a massive fan of the Radions. I've used them since Radion Gen 1, and they've always produced consistent and fantastic results for me. I have dabbled in using Kessels. I've also dabbled in using the AI lights. I've used various T5 fixtures. I've used all kinds of stuff. But hands down, my favorite is the Radions. They definitely have the punch you need for that tank. You can get, what was the width on that tank again, Bri?
It was 60 by 18 by 26.
Yeah.
So 60, okay. For a softy tank, you could get away easily with using 2 fixtures. They cover a 24 by 24 footprint, but even on a 60-inch tank, technically it's 30 by 30. But softies aren't terribly light demanding, and the light spread by the time it hits the bottom of the tank, if you have like zoanthids or mushrooms and other things closer to those areas, they'll still get plenty of light. So my personal recommendation would be a pair of Radions. If you want to take it a step higher, go for a pair of Radion Pros. They're a bit more expensive. They do have a higher output, and they also have a little bit more punch in the blues and UVs. So I think they make everything look awesome. The thing is, though, you have to also enjoy setting things up because they take a little bit of work to get going. You got to hook them up to your USB port on your computer, or you could get the Wi-Fi hub from Ecotech, which is called ReefLink, and you can get them to talk wirelessly with your phone or anything else and set them up that way. But they're a lot of fun. They're great lights. I really can't complain about them. If I had to pick, doesn't matter what coral I'm keeping, I would go with Radions because you can always control intensity.
Cool. All right, so our next question is actually outside of the aquatics world and more into the reptilian one.
Ooh, exciting.
So I know Thomas has had some experience keeping snakes in the past, so we'll get your thoughts on it. But Big Bazonga asks, okay, so I have a Pueblan milk snake, and the only way he's active is with a basking light. The only thing is that this kills the humidity. So I was wondering, what is the best way to hold humidity in an aquarium? Best substrate? What's the best substrate to hold humidity? I have forest bark as substrate. Should I soak that every few days?
Okay. I wish I could have like a conversation with you. So here's the thing. Snakes get heat most effectively from their belly. That means that if you want an alternative to having a heat lamp on the enclosure, your alternative is to use belly heat to the bottom of the enclosure. You can raise the ambient temperature of the enclosure that way, and that spot where that heat mat is, you can essentially stick a little thermometer on it, figure out what the exact temp is, dial it down to whatever the max temperature, basking temperature is for your Puebloan milk snake. And your milk snake at that point should be a little bit more active because it's got the heat that it needs to be active, because snakes are not active when they're cool. They tend not to move as much. And resolve it that way. And the reason that helps is because now, instead of having a heat lamp over the tank that's going to totally dry out your ambient humidity and prevent you from being able to put any kind of a plexiglass or glass over top of the enclosure to help retain some humidity, you can now do that. So you can keep the humidity high, block off a section of the screen top, leave enough that you have some ventilation, but have a lot more humidity retention, and then heat from underneath. Now, if you are spraying or soaking that, you don't ever want to really soak substrate, but if you are spraying the enclosure down and spraying the substrate, that under tank heat pad is going to cause the heat from underneath to, essentially turn that moisture into humidity through heating from below, as opposed to heating from above with that really dry heat lamp and just completely nullifying any moisture in the aquarium. Your other option is to continue using your heat lamp, but instead provide a moist hide box for the snake. So we sell a few of them. I think Brian actually uses one for his leopard geckos. Yep. It's a hide that has a lid on it with a hole cut out, and you'd fill that with New Zealand sphagnum moss or any kind of sphagnum moss. You'd soak that moss, squeeze it in your hands until the water stops dripping out of it, and now it's completely saturated without being soaking. Put that inside the hide, stick the lid on top. Now your milk snake has a place to be humid if it requires it for shedding or is feeling like it's a little bit too dry in the enclosure. Now you've got your heat. But I still stand by that heating from below the tank is best.
All right. So now we can jump right back into the world of aquatics. Andy G asks, what are the key features to look for when choosing a canister filter for a freshwater aquarium?
Go for it.
Well, it depends on the size of the tank, but it depends on the fish as well. Like 3 to 5 times the flow rate compared to the size of the tank. But not if you're doing like cichlids, African cichlids, and you're planning to overcrowd to keep down aggression. Then they always say like 8 to 10 times the flow rate compared to the gallon of the tank. But I don't know. There's so much things with canister filters. Like I don't know.
There's the volume of the canister. So how much media is actually in it is going to make a difference. For instance, I do agree that a lot more flow helps, especially if you're going to have like a cichlid tank where you have rocks all the way up the back wall and stuff. Yeah. Having the extra flow is going to prevent dirt from settling places. Yeah. But like canisters like Eheim have a lower flow per volume of media because they kind of custom tailor the flow of the canister to the biological media specifically. Yeah, so it depends. What I look for in a canister filter is ease of maintenance. So I prefer baskets if possible. I really look for a solid biological media. Your biomedia is the backbone of your system, so that is really, really important. I love Eheim media for that. And we just got the Pro 4s, which
Substrat Pro and FEMX like my favorite.
Yeah, the Pro 4s have even newer biomedia that they just came out with, which looks phenomenal. I've been secretly testing it out on a tank, and it's doing a fantastic job. So
and we actually did a video for it that we're posting within the next week on the Pro 4, so you guys can have a look at that new cool media that they've got.
So ease of maintenance, baskets, and a long-standing history of performance. There are canisters that are on the market by various companies that look like expensive canisters but are actually knockoffs. Yeah. The plastic they use, I've looked at these things, is not the same. And a lot of these canisters, these knockoffs and stuff, you can't get parts for.
Yeah, the availability of parts is the main one, yeah.
Think of a canister filter somewhat like a purchase of, I don't know, like a car. You want to be able to do maintenance on it, right? So if you might spend a little bit more money buying name brand, but at least that way, if a part goes broken or gets worn down, you can replace it because it's available. The media, when it comes time to replace it, you can use proper media because it's available. So just make sure you don't cheap out and buy like a...
It might save initially, but in the long run,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to buy another canister filter to replace that one instead of like replacing an impeller or just like a canister or just like some small piece O-rings, gaskets.
Exactly. We actually get quite a few phone calls a day in our online of people looking for parts for canister filters that don't sell parts because they're just cheap knockoffs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the $120 they say are spent on the filter instead of, let's say, $250 means nothing after 6 months because a part broke
Yeah, so
and there's no way to replace it. So that's my biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, quality, ease of maintenance.
I'm not saying you have to go
availability
Eheim. Hydro makes a fantastic
Yeah.
canister. Rena makes an absolutely
Oh, yeah.
fantastic canister as well. Even Marineland for an entry-level price and an entry-level canister, you're getting a lot of filter for your money. So they're all great options. It's really going to come down to like what she was saying, the size of the tank you're using, the kinds of fish you're keeping, and how hard you plan to pack that tank. Because if you're planning to, you know, take a 90 gallon and put 100 fish in it, you don't want to filter for a 90 gallon. You want to filter for like a 180 gallon and hopefully a 180 gallon tank to go with it, because why are you putting 100 fish in a 90 gallon tank?
You can never overfilter.
You can't. Unless your fish are getting blown against the walls
Yeah.
of the aquarium, it's impossible to overfilter.
Cool. So hopefully that answers that question, Andy. So our next one from John, he asks, is it okay to add a blue lobster with other fish like electric blue acaras?
Acaras.
Acaras. My pronunciation was wrong.
You're thinking of the car.
Acuras.
Right, yeah.
Electric blue Acura.
I know you want to put your blue lobster in your Acura, but
In my opinion, should be okay. Should be, as long as your Acaras are full grown. Lobsters, crayfish, they are predators. They're scavengers, but they will eat fish while they're resting.
Yeah.
So I don't usually recommend putting crayfish, with the exception of, I believe, the dwarf Mexicans. The dwarf Mexican crayfish, or dwarf Mexican lobsters, depending on what they're listed as at your local store. They don't seem to bug small fish, but any of the other, electric blues, the white crayfish, the electric orange, or whatever they're called, red crayfish, they will eat fish if they can catch them. So if your fish are in rest mode and the crayfish happenstance comes across it sitting on the gravel all nice and scrumptious looking, it'll eat it. So be careful. But if the fish is too big for that crayfish to overpower, you're good to go. It should be at least 3 times the size of the crayfish. At least. I've seen them take out fish the same size as themselves. So.
Well, another question from Ewan Marshall. I think he's going back to reptile care. He wants to know about excavator clay. So he says that he has a 4-foot vivarium, and he's just wondering, how do you know how much excavator clay you need? And just speaking from personal experience, we did a video on how to use excavator clay, and on each individual bag or box of it, they do have the
to how extravagant and how much space inside of your enclosure you're planning to scape using that excavator clay. Because even if it says, will typically suit a 20-gallon enclosure on the box or gives dimensions, that's obviously for a very specific amount of space that it's going to be using up. If you want to go crazy with it, fill the entire back wall and have it come out in all crazy shapes, you may need way more of it. What I would say though is, because it's one of those products where once it's dry, it doesn't necessarily have to stay that way. If you get it wet again, you can probably start moving it around again, which I believe they covered in the video.
Remold it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
If you've started it and you realize, I didn't quite have enough, it's not going to hurt to put that down the way it is, get another box and start working again. It doesn't have to get all done in one shot. And for those really nice, extravagant looking, desert displays that have multiple tunnels and holes, it's almost never done in one shot. It's very difficult to do it in one shot. It's better to do it in steps. You get a better structure out of it. You want to make sure that that bottom structure holding up the rest of the excavator clay. I'm talking like I've used this stuff before. I've seen it done enough times. You want to make sure it's solid before you start working on that next level up, because it's going to be supporting it. So it's better to do it in steps. If you buy too much, as long as you don't open the box, you can always return some of it. But I would say go a little bit shy. If you realize you need more, you can always get more.
Perfect. And Ewan also asks, and is it suitable for leopard geckos? Which, again, just from my personal experience, yes, of course it is. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely is.
Perfect. So we'll move on to Dustin Harris. back into aquatics. He asks, LED lights with moonlights, how do I put them on a timer and still be able to use moonlights and daylight LED?
Here's the thing, if it's got a rocker switch, there's no way to do it.
Yeah.
It has to have two separate outlets, or it has to have a built-in timer that allows that. Otherwise, you're out of options.
Yeah, it's on
Unless you're like an electronics engineer and you can figure out how those blue LEDs are, on the board in that circuit, and then somehow wire in a digital timer, which I guess is probably not helping.
I just get a
Answer the
fixture. I
question.
just get a fixture with a timer.
Yeah, it's better off that you just get a fixture that gives you the capability
Yeah.
of either a cord for each, so a power supply separate for each, so you can use just regular mechanical wall timers, or it has a built-in timer on it that will allow you to program the moonlight and the daylight separately.
Perfect. Hopefully that answers your question. But as always, feel free to ask. Something we've faced a lot in the past, and we've recommended many times. We do recommend that you keep your beta in at least a 5-gallon tank with all the proper heating, etc. But what are you guys' personal views on this?
I like them to be happy and comfortable. Like they'll survive for the most part in a smaller tank or beta container, but I believe in giving them the proper size so they can thrive and enjoy their surroundings with the proper heating. Like I wouldn't keep it in a cup or like anything smaller than a 5-gallon. But just like I don't know.
I've mentioned. I bet it's been every single Q&A we've done so far because that's a very popular question. My wife has gotten the aquarium bug from me. Of course she did, and she's got a beta, and that beta is in a 12-gallon tank with a filter. It's running an AquaClear Mini and a heater, and it's got live plants. And that beta is active, always comes to the front of the tank when you walk by because it wants food, eats regularly, is almost never resting because it's always up and about and swimming around.
Yeah. Colors are vibrant, I'm guessing.
Look, it's a great looking beta, and that's because it's all survive in a smaller pool of water by slowing down their metabolism, not eating as much, and not breathing as heavily. Doesn't mean that that's a good thing for them. It's a mechanism that they've evolved with over time because in their natural habitat,
drought,
they go through droughts and periods of time where they can get trapped in small pockets of water, and they need to survive that. But that's not a small pocket of water they get stuck in for the rest of their lives. That's a small pocket of water they get stuck in seasonally, maybe a few days before the next rain. Maybe it's, just during the breeding season. It's important to understand that because a beta in a tank with running water is going to live far longer, happier, and look a lot better. It's the nature of it. They're not, just because they can survive in it doesn't mean it's good for them. It's better to give them all the things necessary for them to thrive long term. If you want to make it supernatural for them, sure, you can take them out once in a while from their fancy tank with running stuff and put them in a cup of water and just sit them on the counter.
And then put it back.
And then put it back.
But don't use Melafix if they don't look good. I've seen that. It's not good.
And I was kidding about taking it out of the tank and putting it in a cup of water. Don't do that. Just let it be happy.
Yeah, just let it be happy.
All right, guys. So following up on that, on the vein of betas, what other fish can you put with a beta in a tank?
Depends on the beta. Some betas will allow for other fish that look fancy to be with them, and some will not. My wife's beta, for instance, lives with 5 male guppies that look fancy and are always swimming around doing their thing, and he doesn't care about them at all. But I've also seen betas tear other guppies apart.
Yeah, or get females, and they'll get along in a community tank with other fish.
The general rule of thumb with betas is don't put anything in with them that's going to compete with them for finnage. So if they've got big fancy fins, chances are the beta's going to see that as competition, get very upset, and beat it up. Because that's just how betas are programmed. Male betas specifically. Females can actually be touchy too. Not as bad, but they can be. Other fish that work really well, let's say you have a beta who seems to hate everything all the time, no matter what. Zebra danios work well. They're fast fish, so betas can't usually keep up with them. Betas aren't very fast because of their large plumage, all their fins. So they work really well. White clouds can work well too. Other small fish that, again, don't compete in terms of finnage with the beta.
Okay, so moving on, Elvis Bear asks, do you think rope fish are good for beginners or any kind of freshwater eels?
I think ropefish are better for beginners than any other kind of freshwater eel. Ropefish aren't actually an eel. I believe they're closely related to Polypterus. They're pretty resilient to both water chemistry and just general living conditions. They eat, they're scavengers for the most part, so they'll eat anything. I've had great success using shrimp pellets, but they're not nearly as finicky as eels because they have scales, which the freshwater eels like tire track eels, fire eels, spiny eels, they don't have scales, which makes them a little bit more sensitive. But if you're really into eels, as long as you do the necessary reading and research on the parameters you need for each species, if you can give them that, they're going to do well for you. I do find though eels are less likely, like true eels, fire eel, tire track, they're more dependent on foods that are closer to what they naturally get. So things like frozen bloodworms or live foods, they tend to do better on. You might have a hard time getting it to eat, flake food or pellets potentially. Whereas ropefish, I've never had a problem getting them to eat anything. Anything that sinks down and smells like food, and they eat it.
Okay, so guys, I see there's a few questions here that pertain to the guys' preferences in fish or tanks or how many tanks they have. We'll get to those closer to the end. We want to really get to all the questions that people have specifically about their own tanks, just because we have so many different questions. So we won't skip over your question altogether, but we will have to round back and ask those questions about Thomas & She later. For now, I'm going to answer Crisis LIR's question. He says, what fish do you recommend for a 55-gallon aquarium?
Go for it.
I'm going to say flowerhorn. But that's just me being biased. But for a 55, you can do a really nice planted tank with a bunch of dwarf fish, like smaller species of fish. Tetras are popular, but they're a little bit more sensitive. 55, I don't know. I like the size of it's nice. It's not too big, but it's not small. I'll go planted. I've done smaller cichlids in a 55. I just like doing the hardscape, lots of hiding
like
areas.
Tanganyikas or
yeah,
something?
the shell dwellers.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're very interactive. They're like the bigger African cichlids. Same personality, same feeding habits, but they stay a lot smaller. They don't grow, so they'll be fine in a 55. But I don't know. There's so many.
There are a lot of options.
Yeah, there are a lot of options.
She kind of nailed it on the head there. Nail on the head. That's the one. 55 is that really comfortable
it's
tank
sweet
size.
Spot, yeah.
Yeah, where your tank's not small, but it's not huge. So you are limited. You don't want to get into things like peacock bass or Oscars that are going to get like this big and not be able to turn around at some point. But you've got a lot of options. If you want some colorful community options that are pretty hardy, rainbow fish are great.
Yeah, rainbow fish are nice.
Great, species of fish to look at. There's lots of different types, lots of color, and they're very swimmy fish. They like to swim around. They bring a lot of movement with them. You could do angels if you wanted to in a 55. Yeah. I would avoid discus. They get much larger, and 55 is, although doable, I would say leave it for larger. You could do goldfish in a K. You definitely want to full cichlids. Oh yeah. There's all kinds of stuff you could do. If it was me, I would just be doing probably the rainbows. I like rainbows. I think they're very pretty community fish, and you can mix them with all kinds of stuff. So you could do rainbows and throw in some live bears, throw in some barbs, whatever you want.
The options, like
tons of options.
It's making my mind go right now. Like what I'll do. I've gone through so many 55s, I can't even remember. But like species only, single of like a larger fish. Yeah. Bunch of small fish, or you can go all crazy and get like 1,000 shrimps. Like
you could. Like that's a real
thing, and they're awesome. Yeah. So yeah, so many options.
Whatever tickles your fancy, you got tons of options ahead of you.
And piggybacking off of that question, Kirk asks, do you have any stocking suggestions for fish in a 120-gallon reef?
More finite. Because you want to stick to reef-safe species. 120 gallons, I'll give you an idea of what you could do with that. There are lots of small wrasse species that would work. So some of my favorites: 6-line wrasse, 4-line wrasse, both gorgeous. Very small wrasse species, won't mess with your corals. Not super aggressive, but pretty aggressive towards other wrasses, so you got to be careful. You'd only want one of each by itself. You wouldn't want to mix them. So they're really cool. Depending on how old your reef is, you could go with mandarin gobies or mandarin dragonettes. I personally like the psychedelic or spotted mandarins. I've had a little bit more success getting them onto prepared foods as well, so I don't have to worry about them surviving on copepods only. Damsel species out the wazoo. If you want to keep damsels, just keep in mind that they can be very aggressive with each other and with other fish like clownfish, so you got to be careful when mixing them. Clownfish for sure, pick a species, throw a pair in, that's always gold.
Cardinals?
Cardinals are fantastic, whether they're Banggai cardinals, orange striped cardinals,
pajama cardinals.
PJ cardinals are great too. Very, very hardy saltwater fish. Banggai cardinals have been known to breed in captivity quite easily, and the babies are large enough to eat prepared foods like Daphne, like frozen Daphne or something like that. So if you wanted to try breeding, that's a good way to go. Stay away from angels. I don't care what kind of angel it is. I don't care if it's a dwarf angel species. I don't care if it's partially reef safe. I have seen too many times, too many different species that are supposed to be reef safe, like flame angels or coral beauties or whatever, that eventually find a coral that they like and destroy it. And sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 2 years, but it seems to tend to happen. So I would just avoid it. Tangs, I would avoid in a 120, except for coal tangs or other bristle-tooth tang species that stay smaller. Coal tangs top out at a smaller size than, say, something like a hippo tang, which can get quite a bit larger. So you won't run into the same problems as you would with those other tang species. And the benefit of things like coal tangs, I can't remember the other species. I'll remember it. Or chevron tangs even, is that they're algae eaters. So they will actually do quite a bit of algae grazing as well. So that's a bonus. Man, there's tons of stuff. Tons of goby species, jawfish. There's all kinds of stuff. The list is massive. Flasher wrasses. What are you into? Tell me what kinds of fish you like, and I can give you a list. Email us, and I can help you sort that out, because it's a massive list. Freshwater too. The freshwater question person. If you want to email us actually shoot it to Cheese email.
In customer service.
Exactly.
Big Al's Online.
And if you want, we can help you pick out, a good selection based on what you already have. It really affects it. So as much as it's easy for me to say, yeah, you could get this and this and this, it depends on what you have and what your goals are. So we can help you plan that out.
All right, and I've included that email address in the comments section, so you guys can shoot an email off to Chi, and then Thomas and Chi can always help you guys out. So let's see here. Our next question, again going back into the reptilian world, is how hard is it to clean a beardy tank?
Not. It's pretty easy.
Do we have a video on that too?
We have a video on how to set it up.
How to bathe them.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I think for me the main thing about this is it all depends on what your substrate is, because that changes how hard it is.
Okay, so if you're using a shredded substrate like aspen or something, onto the bathroom here on an ornament, just pick it up off the ornament, throw it in the garbage. There's usually a little bit of residue or urate left, and just take that thing out, wash it, put it back. If you've got a reptile carpet in there, you can pretty much just pull it out, shake it over top of the garbage. If there isn't a lot of urate staining or anything on it, you can reuse it for the time being. If not, throw it in the wash and then put it back. Just if you're going to wash it, I usually recommend washing it by hand in a tub of just warm water rather than using detergents. I don't like detergents near my animals. That's just me. If you're using a sand substrate, get yourself a kitty litter scoops don't work well because the slats are too big, but they do have, I think ZoomEd has one, a reptile litter scoop, which is a mesh-based scoop. Sand will go through, the reptile junk will not, so then you can just sift it out. It's not hard, and you don't even have to do it that often. Like realistically, once a week of a quick sifting, and you're good.
All right, solid question. That was from Titan Gaming, who is actually hosting a little riddle section in our live chat, so hopefully he heard the answer to his question. Let us know if you have any follow-ups to that, Titan. And there's also another question about how much do we charge for baby bearded dragons. generally in store, more or less?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean that's.
You'd have to call the store.
Yeah, you'd have to call your individual store.
It depends how much the store had purchased it from the breeders, because we don't get them all from the same places. We source them responsibly from various breeders who have a passion for this, and it also depends on what kind of bearded dragon it is, because there are different color morphs and stuff that you can get, which will drastically change the price. I think the least expensive I've ever seen bearded dragons is somewhere around $79 for like your basic baby normal bearded dragon, but that could have been a sale, and I'm quoting incorrectly.
Yeah, there's no real good answer on this.
No,
It's really
you
just
have to
gotta,
contact the
Yeah.
store
Yeah.
and just ask them, because
Yeah.
it'll vary depending.
a lot of controversial things said about it. I was wondering what your views are on them. Some people say they're awful. Some people love them.
Jewel tank?
That's what he says. The jewel tank.
Is that like one of those like a BioCube?
I'm gonna have
Kind
to
of.
look this up, because I don't know what that is.
It's like an all-in-one. I'm thinking with the
It probably is,
filter in the back and.
but I'm willing to
Yeah.
bet Jewel.
While I scoot over here.
I'm willing to bet that it's just not. It's in Europe, right?
He's from the UK.
That's why I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then. So you know what? He'll look it up. If he can give you any thoughts on it, he will. But because we generally don't have them over here, it's kind of tough for him to give you any feedback on it, unfortunately, Ewan. But
You know what? I have no hands-on experience because obviously I am not in Europe. But it does look like a pretty well put together little all-in-one system. So if it's got the
It's like a
from what I'm
JBJ.
seeing, it's got like a little LED light system. It's got the filter in the corner there. As long as everything works and is running, and the filter doesn't look massive, so you don't want to overstock the tank, but it looks like it should work well.
Yeah.
It looks very similar to some of the kits that we get from API that have small filters in them, and they do well. So there's no reason it shouldn't work for you.
okay, great. So moving on back to a leopard gecko question. Elvis Bear asks, "What do I do? My leopard gecko is only eating crickets, and he will not eat anything else." The leopard gecko's name is Vegeta.
Vegeta,
Sure.
I think.
Maybe.
Dragon Ball.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Whatever,
Sorry,
cool name.
Sorry about your luck. It's very difficult to get them to eat something they don't want to eat. I have switched animals' food from one food to another through prolonged lack of feeding, which is not a nice way to do it, and it's very dangerous, and I don't recommend it unless you're like a vet. Hungry animals tend to be less picky about what they're eating, so maybe skip a feeding and then try offering a different food, but don't go longer than that. If your leopard gecko just wants to eat crickets, that sucks, but just get some supplements. Make sure you dust the crickets so they're getting a wide variety of nutrients through different supplements, like a general purpose vitamin supplement from, say, RepCal. They've got their calcium with D3, calcium without D3. They've also got just their general vitamin supplement. You can get Repashi's Super Pig, which has a lot of carotenoids in it, which is great. And just try to keep a variety of dusts available so that you can dust those crickets with different things. If your leopard gecko doesn't want to eat things like wax worms or phoenix worms or super worms, mealworms, other worms, then you just have to dust those crickets to make sure it's getting a nice wide variety of nutrients. Calcium is really important. Regardless of what you're feeding, you should always dust at least with some calcium.
Okay, great. The next question from Derek is, what cleanup crew do you recommend for a tropical tank?
Go, Chi.
Snails.
What kind?
Yeah.
Be specific. That's a dangerous road.
Yeah, not Malaysian trumpet snails, but a tropical tank. I don't know.
Mystery snails can work okay.
Mystery snails are good.
Nerites I prefer. Nerite snails are pretty good for algae.
Autocats.
Autocats are fantastic. If you're looking for, this is the thing. For a cleanup crew, if we're talking algae specifically,
Yeah.
Nerites, it doesn't matter what kind of nerite, as long as it's your freshwater nerite, they'll do a pretty good job. Amano shrimp
Oh yeah.
do a
mono
really
shrimp are
good
great,
job.
Yeah.
Autocats are fantastic. And for plecos, specifically, I prefer ancestris or bushy nose plecos.
Yeah.
They tend to eat more algae than the other plecos, which eventually just get big and stop doing anything.
And just poop.
Exactly. Just eat your other fish's food and poop. For algae, they do a great job. If we're talking excess food, loaches do a great job. Any of the loach species, I think, are pretty awesome. Cory cats do a fantastic job too. You just have to make sure that if there isn't a lot of excess food going down there, you need to supplement with
Algae
some kind
wafers.
of something, because they have a fast little metabolism for a small fish. So you want to make sure they're getting regularly fed, but they do a great job of getting in the nooks and crannies of the gravel.
And this one from Fish Tanker Man 123 asks, can you keep a Florida gar with an African lungfish?
No. I wouldn't keep anything with an African lungfish. I have seen what they can do. They get massive. Okay. Way back in the day, when I was probably 18 years old, I went to a friend's house who had this is a little story. Went to a friend's house who had a 220-gallon aquarium, massive aquarium, really decent-sized gar, and he had a gigantic African lungfish who I recall biting things directly in half. How fish with anything that you cared about, because there's a good chance it's going to get you. But that's just from my limited experience of seeing what they're capable of doing. So no, I wouldn't keep anything with them. Nothing you didn't expect to get eaten.
All right, so the next question, we're jumping back to beardies. The Blue Monkey says, my mom won't let me get a beardie because she doesn't want it crawling around the house. Any tips?
Don't let it out. It doesn't need to crawl around the house. And also, when they're older, they're super lazy. Super lazy.
Yeah, they just hang out there and.
Super. Can I go get Hank?
Yeah, he's not even gonna move.
Sure,
I'll be right back.
Any other tips to convince your mom to let you get a beardie? I don't know. They're fairly simple to care for. I think that's a good one. I mean, you can keep it in your room. It's your own personal pet that you're very responsible for. It's not gonna be like an annoying chihuahua or something that goes yapping around the house.
Yeah, well, it's not gonna be running around the house like.
Yeah, you know.
Well, they're fairly quick when they're small, but.
Yeah.
But still, they usually stay within their enclosure, and you let them out. They just hang around.
And they're kind of a neat pet for learning. You know, like anyone can keep a dog and a cat. I mean, you feed it and take the dog for walks. But a beardie, you're going to learn a lot from that. I'll learn a lot about reptiles.
Yeah, it's a great learning experience.
Absolutely. I think tell your mom that.
Responsibility.
Yeah, tell your mom that you're going to learn a lot about this.
This is how a beardie runs around the house.
On your sweater.
They don't run around the house. They're pretty relaxed. They're great pets, especially adults. When they're babies, they're a little bit more active. When they're adults, they eat and they lounge and they bask and they lounge.
And they bask.
And they bask. But yeah, this is him. I can keep him here for the rest of the live Q&A, and this will be pretty good proof that they don't run around the house.
Perfect. So listen, the Blue Monkey, I think you should just go to your mom and you should show her this. We have a video on how to set up the bearded dragon terrarium. It's a fun experience that you're going to be able to learn from. So tell her that. Why wouldn't you want?
And I would say, arguably, it is the best reptile to start with.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a lizard, probably the best. They're not fragile, very easy to take care of. We raised this guy from a tiny, tiny little bearded dragon baby, which if you see that how to set up a bearded dragon video, which I totally recommend watching, especially if it's going to be your first pet, you'll see how much he's grown. And this is an adult. This is as big as they're going to get.
So tell your mom that, and hopefully she'll let you guys see. What's our next question here? What can I do to keep brown algae at bay?
Freshwater, saltwater?
They don't actually specify.
Because it could be diatoms.
Yeah, it depends what it is, because different treatment for different things.
Okay, so Carl, you know what? If you can just actually clarify with us, freshwater. Any tips on Cory cats?
In general?
Thomas loves Cory cats.
Yeah, they're great. Robust. Although I do really like the little dwarf panda Cory cats. They're super cute.
Yeah, they're awesome.
What I actually would say is they do a little bit better with a gravel substrate than they do with a sand substrate. I find sand sometimes is a little rough on their bellies depending on what kind of sand it is. Some sand is like little shards of glass, whereas other types of sand is very round and smooth. So it really depends what you're going to put them on. Their barbells are a little bit sensitive, so I just find that if you have them on a finer gravel or just a regular pea gravel, that works the best for them. and then they can still get in those nooks and crannies and eat everything up. They also like to have a little bit of cover, so if you don't have a lot of decorations in your tank, I would say get some different plastic plants or even like little log hides or anything that'll give them a little spot that they can tuck away.
Terracotta pots.
Terracotta pots work well, actually, very well. Gives them a place to hide when they're feeling a little bit exposed. It usually takes Corys a little bit of time to feel comfortable out in the open in a new aquarium. They're going to hide on you for the first little bit, so giving them that place to hide is important. Otherwise, they have a hard time settling down.
Okay, our next question is, with what can I feed guppies to grow?
Anything. Flake food, staple flake food. There are certain flake foods that are designed for growth. I believe Cobalt makes one. Breeder flakes are pretty good from Cobalt too, just in terms of color and growth.
I think New Life Spectrum and Hikari have specialty food, no?
So growth formulas tend to be a little bit higher in protein and stuff like that. Gives the fish a boost of nutrients to continue to grow rapidly. I do recommend though, don't overfeed or anything like that trying to get them to grow quickly.
Yeah.
It is better that they just grow at a natural pace than for them to blow up very quickly. So slow and steady wins the race. Give them enough food that they can grow. Don't go crazy trying to blow them up like a balloon.
Or get a blue molly. Had nothing to do with that, but he said balloon. And they're live bears.
All right, guys. So just a reminder, guys, I know there's a ton of questions we're getting to, so we're just going in sequence. We will get to your questions, so just kind of hang out and listen to all the rest of the great advice that the guys are giving. So with that said, I'm going to move back into reptiles if you don't mind. Justin asks, I've heard that veiled chameleons are the hardiest of the family, but would you think it's a good idea to get one as a first reptile? I have experience with keeping animals. I have a 75-gallon cichlid tank right now.
A big part of me wants to say no. Chameleons aren't great starting animals. However, this is a lizard I'm fascinated with. If you do the research and you figure out what they're going to need and put a lot of planning into their enclosures, a lot of planning into how you're going to feed them, how you're going to keep them, you'll be successful. They're not overly difficult. They're just a little bit more sensitive and fragile in terms of lizards. So what I would say is, as long as you understand that a chameleon is not a lizard you're going to be handling, like Hank, I can handle. I can touch him. He's no big deal. He doesn't care. Chameleons are like that. They get very stressed from being handled, typically. So as long as you're okay with that, and you do your research, figure out, depending on species, if you want to start with veiled, you just have to make sure you're giving it the proper care. This is Hank, by the way, running away from me.
He's running very fast.
Running around the house. He made it 6 inches down my arm. But yeah, if you're going to put the research in, there's no reason you can't keep a chameleon. If you want a pet you can play with and handle, chameleon's not it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving back into the world of aquatics. Patty asks,
nipping is not good, period. Barbs are just nippy fish. It's hard to get away from. If they're damaging the angel's fins, it's a problem. If they're not damaging the angel's fins, it's not so much of a problem as it is just, I'm sure, an annoyance for the angels. Keep an eye on it, monitor it. If it is a problem, you're going to have to pick one or the other.
best and beautiful combination for a starter 10-gallon aquarium. And before you guys answer, I just want to say, guys, if you have questions like this, kind of give us an idea of what you're already planning. Are you going to do a planet aquarium? What kind of plants you can use? I think the more context you can give these guys, the better they can answer your questions. So with that said, best and beautiful combination for a starter 10-gallon aquarium, please.
Holder. But I think a tried, tested, and true type of fish to put in smaller aquariums like that are live bears.
Yeah. Because
guppies come in a massive array of colors. So you can pretty much pick your favorites and stick them in there, and they're going to have a good time. Same goes for things like swordtails. You can just fit less of them than guppies. Endlers are really great. Tetras are great fish, but they're more sensitive. So if it's your first tank, I don't usually recommend tetras. But you could also do dwarf cichlids.
Dwarf cichlids. Shrimps, another one of my favorites. There's a good amount of options.
Okay, I'm gonna I'm just gonna, let's say 3 male guppies, 2 koi catfish of your choosing that stay small. I would probably 2 auto catfish and an Amano shrimp.
Well, since we're playing this game, I'll do a variety of low light plants, low tech plants, a little bit of wood, and maybe 1-2 rocks, a bunch of shrimps. Well, when I say a bunch, maybe like 20. 20. You can do like crystal shrimps, dwarf cherry shrimps, whatever variation. And yeah, that's probably pretty much it. Maybe throw in 1 snail. But what type of snail is important?
It's true.
So like a mystery snail, apple snail. Well, they get pretty big, but it's still nice in there.
All right, we're going to touch on something we talked about a bit earlier, but I'm not sure if Derek was around for this part of the conversation. Is there a good method to vacuuming a heavily planted tank with a sand substrate?
Sand.
There's no good method for gravel vacuuming sand.
Yeah.
What I usually do if I'm dealing with sand, dirt doesn't typically get under sand unless there's something moving the sand around in the tank. It tends to stay on top. So what I would do is get the siphon started and hover the bell of the gravel siphon just above the sand and try to pull off anything on top of the sand. If there is stuff that is under the sand, take 1 hand so you can crimp the tubing and slow the flow down, push that into the sand, and you can control how much water versus sand is being sucked up via that crimped piece of tubing in your hand, and that's really the most finesse you're going to get out of it.
Well, even with the Python, you can just, the little valve there.
Turn it down?
Yeah, turn down the valve.
Here, come here, buddy. Where are we going? Where are we going?
Yeah, with sand, usually I'll fan it, or like what you were saying, just hover the siphon over it.
Great. So do neon tetras go well with other tetras? Do we need a school?
They like being in schools, and with other tetras, what do you say, like cardinals maybe?
It depends on what tetras.
Neons, right?
Yeah,
No, I'm saying like with
depends.
other,
Well,
what other species of tetras? Tetras in general do get along, but there are species of tetras, like piranhas for instance, that don't get along with other fish. Exodon tetras, terrible tetra to have with other tetras. But in general, yeah, you could have, a school of neons. When I say a school, I usually mean 6 or more fish.
Yeah.
When it comes to neons and cardinals and rummy nose and tetras like that, I usually mean 12 or more because they tend to do better in larger groups. So if you had, 6 to 12 of each, that's fine. They're not going to get upset with each other.
Yeah.
Diamond tetras should be okay. All kinds. Emperor tetras. Black neon tetras. Gold tetras. I had a planet tank with like 50 between, like, I don't know, it was 25 and 25 probably. Black neons and gold tetras. Stunning.
Oh, yeah.
Black neons are really cool. I like them a lot. Anyways, I digress.
All right, so we'll move on to the next question here. And guys, we're going to be wrapping this up fairly soon. We've been at this for about an hour and a half, more or less, so we are going to wrap it up soon. So if you have any final questions, make sure you post them now, and we'll get to them before we cut off the live stream. All right. So let's see here. Where were we? Can I add a nerite to my 3.5 beta tank?
Sure. Disclaimer with nerites, though, they have a habit of trying to come out of the water. So if your tank doesn't have a hood and or a trim on it, there's a good chance it'll end up on the counter. Just saying.
Okay. And how do you supplement BN plecos in an African peacock tank? Tried algae wafers and cucumber slices. Peacocks eat it all.
Take a long tube, like a gravel tube, and while you're feeding the fish at the top of the tank, drop the algae wafer down that tube to the very bottom of the aquarium. So it's basically shielded the whole way down till it gets down to where your pleco is, and make sure your pleco gets on top of it before the fish, that you're feeding at the top of the tank have a chance to do anything. It's the only way I've been able to spot feed fish in that kind of a situation.
Solid advice. Sophis asks, can you keep goldfish with gouramis?
No, because goldfish are cold water and gouramis are tropical. So it's a bad combination.
Do not do that.
One's not going to like it.
No, and goldfish that are kept too warm have a habit of getting sick with bacterial infections, which can spread to just about any.
All right, one from Elvis Bear asks, thank you. think Pac-Man frogs are good for beginners?
Yes, as long as you don't get your fingers too close to their mouth.
Yeah.
I've had Pac. You can very easily get Pac-Man frogs. Entire line of canned insect products. It is very easy, very easy to get a pair of tongs and just tease those frogs into eating those canned products. So it's a lot better than some other frog species that will only take live foods. And the fact that they are, adorable and round, like you can't lose. And you can collect them. There's albinos, there's greens, there's green albinos, there's fantasy frogs, which are actually a hybrid between, I believe, a Suriname horn something or other, and it's been a while since I kept them, so forgive my lack of Latin at the moment. But yeah, they're awesome.
All right, so just full disclosure, as the video guy, I don't know much about fish. I have no idea how to pronounce this one and not butcher it.
Bashirs?
Bashirs, is that it?
Polypterus, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So the next question then is, I'm getting a tank made. I want to keep large Bashirs. What size tank should I get? Nailed it.
If I was going to go with a 180 or a 220, but if that is too, big, because I know not everybody has like 6 feet by 2 feet by whatever in their house for a tank. The smallest I would go is 75. Optimally, I'd probably go 120.
All right, guys, so we have the follow-up from Carl about the brown algae.
Oh, okay.
So, brown algae, how to keep it at bay in a freshwater tank.
I would double check via a phosphate test kit that you don't have high phosphates in your water. Obviously, you want to check your nitrates. That's a given. If you don't have high phosphates and your nitrates are in check, look at your photo period, because if you have your lights on your tank on longer than, let's say, 8 hours a day and it's not a planted tank, there's no need to have it on more than that. If it's planted, don't exceed 10 to 12 hours. 12 is a long photo period, and I don't recommend it unless you already have algae under control in a planted tank. You're probably better off between 8 to 10 hours. If we're near a window, do something about it, because it'll never stop.
How do you differentiate barbs from tetras? I get confused.
The name tag at the fish store. That's honestly, unless I have diagrams of both fish to point out all the features, it's really hard to say, because there are barbs that don't even look much like most other barbs. Long story short, if you type barbs into Google Images, you're going to get barbs aquarium fish. You'll see a whole bunch of different barbs. Tiger barbs, green tiger barbs, gold barbs, rosy barbs. A lot of barbs are going to have visible scales, so when you look at them, you'll be able to see each individual scale regardless of the size of the fish. With tetras, unless you're looking at species like diamond tetras that have a metallic scale, tetras almost look like they don't have scales because the scales are so small. So that's one way you can kind of differentiate just by staring at them. But you're best off just go into Google Images, type in aquarium tetra and aquarium barb, and compare the photos you're looking at. There's so many different species, it's hard to say for certain what you can look for.
He's running.
Zoom.
Hank's running all over the house.
He's gone.
He's all over the house.
He just went and came back.
All right, guys. This one's from Titan. It's a tough one. What goes through towns and over hills but never moves?
What goes through towns and over hills
but never moves? Just okay. Just sit on that one. We'll come back to that. You guys think about that one. So that one's for you, Titan. Elvis Bear asks, what's easier to take care of, a reptile tank or a fish tank for a 10-year-old?
Reptile tank. Reptile enclosure requires less maintenance, hands down.
Yeah.
Fish are more sensitive and more likely to perish from lack of maintenance than a reptile. However, I will follow that up by saying whatever the child is most interested in is most likely going to be the thing that they'll continue to take care of.
Yeah.
So don't try to substitute one for the other unless your child shows equal interest in both, because the last thing you want to do is have a pet that you now have to take care of because your kid wasn't, interested in it to begin with.
Okay, let's see here. Next question. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if we answered that one or not. And the answer was
Yes, but it can crawl out.
right.
So
Just make sure your tank has a lid and or a lip around the top so that the snail can't get out of the tank.
Okay, well that's a good one. So Anusha, hopefully you got it that time. Let's see. Are Danny?
No. If any of them were going to even be remotely aggressive, it'd be the giant Danios. But I've never seen giant Danios even be aggressive. They're a schooling fish that likes to move away from other fish if things are getting rowdy.
Okie dokie. Next, we're moving on to sweet name. Hey guys, my Fahaka puffer needs a dentist. What would you suggest to maintain his teeth?
of what, snails?
Snail shells,
Yeah.
clam shells, cuttlefish bone. Really, for their teeth, if you're feeding a diet of like frozen thawed clams on a half shell, they should, or even just shut like live clams, which is difficult because you don't know where they're coming from if you buy them from a grocery store necessarily, and I don't know. I'm always weary about that. But if they're eating things off of a shell the way they should be filing their teeth down at the same time. So if all you're feeding is, which I assume you obviously know that their diet, because you mentioned besides just their diet, I think you have a good understanding that they should be eating things that come from a shell. But the shell should be there when they're eating because they will end up chewing down on it to pull all of that meat out. And they should, in that process, be working on their teeth.
All right, here. The next question is, can 2 Oscars and a school of 10 silver dollars and 15 Buenos Aires tetras live amicably?
I hope that tank's huge.
I was just going to say that. So, sorry, 10 silver dollars, 15 Buenos Aires tetras?
2 Oscars, 10 silver dollars, and 15 Buenos Aires tetras.
If the Oscars don't eat the tetras, sure.
Yeah. I thought that was a riddle. I'm still thinking what's going through town.
I would skip the Oscars.
Yeah.
The silver dollars and the Buenos Aires tetras should be fine together. The Oscars I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw them in that tank. Big fish with big mouths that eat other fish.
Yeah.
Speaking of fish getting along or not getting along, can purple and chevron tangs be kept together in a 60-inch, 120-gallon tank?
Potentially. Depends how irate either one of those tanks gets around other tanks. For instance, we have a tank in the office here that's got 5 different tanks in it, and they all seem to get along just fine with tendencies of aggression here and there, but nobody's getting hurt, which is the important thing. And it does include actually a chevron tang. I'd say that purple tangs are probably more than chevron tangs. It depends. Those are both 2 very, but isn't necessarily likely to work.
All right, this one's from Lone Bacon, who asks, how many fish can you put in a tank?
Size of the tank, type of the fish. And it's hard
That is such an open-ended question.
Yeah.
The general rule of thumb that I was taught many eons ago was that it was 1 inch of fish per gallon of aquarium. However, that doesn't always apply because you cannot put a.
Yeah, so
But you could put 6 1-inch tetras in a 6-gallon tank.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. You could put a 2-inch fish and 5 1-inch fish in an 8-gallon tank, or a 7-gallon tank, or a 15-gallon tank.
Well, what are you interested in? What type of fish? Size of the tank? Maybe you can shoot me an email. Me and Thomas can look at it.
Okay, I'll try to attempt giving a less vague answer. Whatever fish you're going to put in whatever size tank, and however many of it you're going to put in there, the fish has to be able to turn around in the tank comfortably. So in my opinion, that means that the depth of the tank front to back needs to be at least twice the length of the fish. So if the fish is 6 inches, it should have at least 12 inches to turn around. Minimum. Should be more in my opinion, but minimum. And then it should at least have minimum 4 times its body length in aquarium. So if it's a 6-inch fish, it should have at least a 24-inch minimum. And that depends on species, because if we're dealing with species of fish that move around a lot quickly, you're going to need a much bigger tank than that. So I am usually comfortable putting like a large rainbow fish, let's say, in like a 90-gallon aquarium. But if I was keeping a 6-inch toadfish, like freshwater toadfish, they don't really care about how much space there is in the tank. I might actually stick that fish in maybe a 30-gallon, something quite a bit smaller that's maybe only 24 to 30 inches in length. So depends on species, depends on the actual size of the fish and the requirements of that species.
Yeah, they're active, their temperaments.
Okay, our next question is for TJ Miyagi.
Oh, I know who this is.
And the question is, what's the nicest zoanthid and your favorite zoanthid?
Oh, so hard to say. So many pretty colors. Oh. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Purple Death, which is a Palithoa. But that thing is crazy. I remember when the Purple Deaths first came out, everybody was crazy for them. They were amazing. And my good friend Josh, who we both kept saltwater tanks at roughly the same time, and we both really were jazzed about zoanthids for quite a while. Him probably more so than I was. He always was able to hook me up with some nice zoanthids whenever I needed them, and I remember he one time gave me some really sick Purple Deaths, and yeah, that's for sure 100%. It's got to be Purple Death.
All right, so we'll move on to Carlos. He asks, what LED lights would you recommend for a planted 55-gallon?
Planted 55-gallon. What plants?
He does not specify.
What would you suggest?
Current USA, 48 to 60, LED Plus, or the Eco Exotic.
Yeah, either one of those is actually a great option.
This is just the adjustability and there's so much options with those, and for the price range, you can't really go wrong.
It's true. For like a good decent output LED unit, depending on the
needs of the plants, right?
Yeah, like if you're dealing with plants that have high amounts of red, purple, or orange pigment in the leaves, you may not get all the color you're looking for unless you're using multiple fixtures.
Yeah.
In which case, I'd probably just recommend the Eco Exotic because the physical fixture itself is thinner, so you could easily get two of them on an aquarium, whereas the Current USA might be a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
But both are fantastic options. For the Current USA, it's the Satellite Plus Pro you'd want, and Eco Exotic, it is the E-Series.
E-Series.
Fully adjustable, fantastic lights. If you you want to do your best to get as much growth and color out of the plants, run them full pop on all channels. But that depends if you're running CO2 or not. They are adjustable in intensity as well, so if you find that you're getting more algae and not enough plant growth, you can dim the LEDs down, which is great. If you don't want to invest in LED, which I highly recommend because A, no bulb changes, B, you're going to get like a fixture is going to be half the wattage of a T5 fixture. Yeah. So it's a great investment, and you have a controllability in the built-in timer and everything. If not, a great option for a T5 fixture, the Marquee fixtures from Aquatic Life. Great fixture, built-in timer, dual bulb. It's going to give you two 6500K bulbs. Yes, you have to change them every year, but your initial investment in the fixture is going to be a bit lower for you. So that's also an option.
All right, next question. And guys, everyone out there, we are about to wrap up. We're going to maybe take 5 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap this sucker up. So thanks, everyone, for your questions. We'll answer the last of them now, starting with, what is the most underrated freshwater fish?
Gee, you can start that one.
Underrated?
Freshwater fish, underrated. Underappreciated.
To who?
In your opinion. It's your opinion. It's great. You can't be wrong.
Okay, I'm going to think about it, and I'll hop back on it.
Most underrated freshwater fish that I can think of. I'm going to say that there are more than a handful of species that actually fit that description, because I think what really takes the main stage in freshwater aquarium keeping right now are your tetras, your barbs, all of your live bearers, your angelfish, and your African cichlids.
Cichlids, yeah.
They take up, and rainbows, they take up the bulk of it, discus as well. But there are some really cool fish that people don't always get into, which I think is a shame. Epistogrammus could be one of them. Killifish is another. Although there are, niche hobbyists who like love these fish specifically and breed them and, do all that with them. When it comes to the grand scope of things, I feel like they're really missed out on. Like, you don't often walk into an aquarium shop and see a wide variety of really cool killifish that you can, try out in your aquarium and work with and breed and have fun with. And the same goes for other like really cool species of catfish, like oddball fish, like catfish, hoplo catfish. I don't see very often, but they're really cool. Banjo catfish, which people have become more popular. People don't always get to see them because they tend to bury themselves or be on the bottom of the tank or whatever. But fish out there. Epistogrammus, great little cichlid, fantastic looking. So many different.
And the fins are beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous. You don't really see them that often, and you don't really hear about them that often from the average aquarium keeper because people are, sticking to the other things. Now, so be it. Killifish can be difficult. They have a short life cycle. Some killifish last a year, and then, that's their full lifespan. So unless you're breeding them, you don't really get to enjoy them long term. But that isn't to say you can't. So I urge more people to try because they're really cool. If you Google, image search, killifish.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Man. They're like little rainbows with smiley faces. Did you pick one?
No. I'm like over here making sure Hank doesn't run away, but I don't know, maybe even like certain species like South American cichlids. They're not.
Yes.
They're so beautiful and the colors are amazing, but I can't get any names to the top of my head right now. Or what's that one that's mixed? Not the Midas. I showed you the other time.
Yeah.
So colorful.
Yeah.
I just can't remember the name.
It's because it's a Latin name you don't hear often, and it doesn't have a common name. There are lots of South Americans that you just don't see every day that are so cool. Yeah.
All right, we'll keep this one fairly quick, but Puppy Pop wants to know what's your favorite type of betta fish, if you have one.
I've always been a fan of the dragon scale placat.
Is it the giant one?
Placats? No, the guys who have the short placat fins.
Okay.
I like them. If we're talking beta splendens, which is what I figured you were asking. If we're talking, I gotta look it up. Which are the common
that's the one
fighting.
I'm thinking. I like I forgot the actual name, but it's the larger one.
I'm gonna find it because I agree that's the best.
And that one's straight from Cambodia.
I'm gonna find it. They've got a really big mouth. They look super aggressive. They look almost kind of like a hybrid between a snakehead and a beta. They're crazy.
That was what we were looking at the other day, no?
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the name of it.
While we wait for that, we've had Elvis ask if you guys are ever going to do store tours.
Beta macrostoma. That is the coolest beta.
Put the picture up.
There are some other. The camera's not going to care about my picture. This guy. Does it show up, Brian?
It does. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, that is like my favorite beta of all time. There are other species of oddball betas that I think are really cool as well.
Well, it's not showing.
Is it?
There we go. Just have angle down. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's like if I had to pick non-splendens, if we're talking splendens, any color of the dragon scale placats, I just think are gorgeous.
Perfect. So yeah, like I said, they were asking if you're ever going to do a store tour because it'd be awesome to meet you guys in person. Well, they are in store every now and then for video shoots or for special events, so just keep your eyes peeled for upcoming events, and you never know, maybe it's something we should arrange. Yeah. We'll look into it and just keep your eyes peeled, all right, guys? Keep your eyes peeled to YouTube, our website, bigowls.ca if you live in Canada, and you never know. Miller, is 75-gallon good for yellow tang?
No, if I'm being honest. An adult yellow tang in a 75 is not the best. Cold tang, better option. Chevron tang, better option. Yellow as a small juvenile. Eventually, we're talking about a fish that can get like this, that in a 75 would just be not good. It won't live its full life in there. And it might you'd like it to.
Okay, let's see here. What pleco can work in a planted tank?
Ancistrus. But if you want something better than a bushy nose for cleaning algae on plants, auto catfish all the way. Auto cats are fantastic. and a mono shrimp. Try tested and true deposits on driftwood and stuff. They never end up hatching. I believe they require brackish water in order to hatch, something like that. But they will lay them there, and they look like these little white dots. So that will happen. But the algae eating totally makes up for it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Giveaway. Thank you for answering all my questions. Have a good day. Thank you. The Q&A helped a lot of people today. So we're happy it helped you. In terms of giveaway, we do another contest. That we're just sorting out all the details now. So again, keep your eyes peeled on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, website. Just make sure you visit often, subscribe to our newsletter, because you'll hear all about those kind of things then. Okay. So yes, we're doing more stuff. Just make sure you keep your eyes peeled. The next question from Raish is it absolutely inhumane to keep 2 angelfish in a 10-gallon, or would you give it a chance, taking them out of the 10-gallon and putting them in my pond?
Depending on your climate, the pond thing's probably not a great idea.
Yeah.
Angelfish get far too large for a 10-gallon. Even young angelfish in a 10-gallon is a bad idea. So long story short is don't put angelfish in a 10-gallon. Minimum size tank for a pair of angelfish, minimum in my mind is 30 gallons, minimum. Probably be a little bit more comfortable with maybe 45 gallons of water and space. Adult angels make a great display fish when you're dealing with a little bit more water volume, maybe something closer to like 90 gallons. Then you can have a group of them and disperse that aggression a little. Angels can get picky with each other if they don't have the space. But angels get large, like top fin to bottom fin. They can get pretty big, body size like.
Questions, and we gotta end this sucker. So
I still haven't come up with the answer to that riddle.
Me neither.
Oh, don't worry. We'll get to it.
Hopefully he gives us the answer if we can't get it.
All right, let's see here.
I will just look it up, bro.
Okay, Ewan asked, back to leopard gecko, how long can a leopard gecko be out of his vivarium without being harmed? I would go ahead and say, he's going to start getting cold, so you want to take him out for handling for maybe.
They're used to temperature drops at night. So your average house temperature isn't that bad as long as we're talking low 70s to mid 70s. If you're the kind of person who likes icicles on their eyebrows at their house, and jumps into bed and it's 65 degrees in their house Fahrenheit, that's not going to fly. But if we're talking in the 70s, you can have them out for quite a while, especially if it's already the evening. And it's going to come down to how much handling that gecko can deal with before it's starting to show signs of stress, which for some geckos is right away. And with other geckos, they almost never show it. Like our video producer here, Brian, has 2 leopard geckos. The male is completely and utterly placid. Like, he doesn't care what you're doing with him. He's happy no matter what's going on.
Poncho.
Yeah, he's cool. The female, however, is a little bit more touchy, and she'll start to show signs of stress within minutes of being handled.
Within seconds.
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on what her mood is at that point. But yeah, so read your animals. If your animal is starting to show signs of stress, being skittish, whipping itself away from you, stop handling it. Put it back in the enclosure. You can handle, if you've got a very stressful animal, handling should be done sporadically, every other day for a short period of time for as long as the animal can handle it. Eventually the hope is that period of time will grow. If your animal's totally cool with being handled all the time, and as long as your house temperature is appropriate and not so cold that it's going to do any harm to the animal, then you can have it out for as long as you like.
Perfect. So, question from Sammy says, hi, I finally got here, so thanks for joining us.
Yay!
Yes. And so we'll get to your question. You asked, what's the best thing, HOV or canister? 180-liter tank, so that's about 47 gallons. Thanks.
Canister. I will always say canister. No matter what the question is, the answer is canister. Yeah, I will even put a canister filter on a 10-gallon tank. I'm just a canister filter kind of guy. When you look at the volume of media being held by a hang-on-the-back filter versus a canister filter, even rated for the same tank, the canister always has so much more physical media inside of it, meaning that it's got a longer way to go, less maintenance required, and a larger biological capacity. We're hoping that whoever designed the canister put a lot of biomedia in it.
Yeah.
But manufacturer. So yeah, I would always say canister is your best bet. However, there is convenience to having a hang on the back. Cartridge changes are quick. Maintenance is, a lot easier to predict because you're staring at the filter. You can literally see the pad there. If it looks like it's saturated, you can just take it out and chuck it and put a new one. A canister, it's hard to see into it unless it's clear, which yeah, I mean, hang on the backs can be a little bit less intimidating, but canisters, bar none, I find to be a better filter all around, and you know, a little bit easier on you as a person for maintenance.
But hang-ons do have good flow.
They do.
They have a lot of flow,
They
a lot of surface agitation.
What hang-ons tend to do is they make up for lack of the amount of media with turnover. So they're taking that water and turning it through the media faster, so it's as if there was double the media there. However, there isn't, so that cartridge will get clogged faster.
All right, and our final question of the day from Kirk: what are the best filters for sumpless saltwater tanks?
Canisters.
Yeah.
What did I just say? What did I just say? I've run reefs on canisters 3 times now. One of them was an SPS and clam reef, and it did extremely well. I didn't even run a skimmer on that tank. So long story short, I would say canister is probably your best option. A skimmer is necessary only in the event, in my opinion, that you're not prepared to do frequent water changes. I did 5-gallon water changes every week on a 20-gallon tank with a canister and had awesome success with SPS and clams.
So what do you say for people that say it's a nitrate factory to use canisters on saltwater?
No. It's only a nitrate factory if you set them up incorrectly. Yeah. So for instance, when I set up a canister for a saltwater tank, I use a coarse foam pad, biological media, and a coarse foam pad. What I don't do is a coarse foam pad, biological media, and a polishing pad, because that polishing pad will get saturated quickly, and that can produce nitrates. However, your biological process from the canister isn't going to be so grand that it's going to cause nitrates through the roof. I actually had a problem with that tank of not having enough nutrients, because it was a soft coral heavy tank at first, and then I removed all those soft corals and went SPS because I couldn't get nutrients into the system. So I was like, fine, I'll just keep SPS and they'll be colorful and it'll be awesome, and then I'll put a clam in there, and it was great.
Okay, guys, sorry, there is one more question that was asked yesterday before the stream started, and she just jumped on now and asked it again. So I will ask, hi, I got a beta and it's in the corner a lot. Any idea maybe why?
Here's what I'll say. There's lots of reasons that could be happening, and unless we have more details about how that beta is being set up in the system, it's very difficult for us to answer. So Brian threw our email up there. He'll do it again. It's customerservice@bigowlsonline.com. That'll go straight to Chi. Chi and I will collaborate on your email there. Give us, if you can, a photo of the setup that you've got there, just a brief description of what. If you don't have a test kit, take it to your local aquarium store. They can usually do it for you. And we'll see if we can help you get that beta out of the corner.
Sweet. All right, guys. So just to wrap things up, what goes through cities and over hills but doesn't move?
My reputation.
The sun.
The answer is road. Road was the correct answer. So I'm going to dock you both 10 points.
Well, I think that was clever.
So anyway, guys,
every single Q&A and ask a riddle until we get one right.
Absolutely.
And then keep coming after that.
From now on, Titan, that's your role, okay? You have to show up every time and you have to do that, all right? So guys, thanks again for joining and asking all kinds of questions. We really enjoyed having you guys here. We do want to try and do these more often. We've just retrofitted our office with a fancy new internet. So we're going to be looking to do these YouTube Q&As at least once a month. We're thinking maybe the first Thursday of every month. But of course, so again, keep your eyes peeled and never miss a live Q&A because we loved answering your questions. Make sure you guys visit bigowlspets.com. If you're in the US, all the products we talked about are there. All of our new underwater treasures decorations, they're going to be there. Cool. Yeah, so make sure you guys check that out. If you're in Canada, visit bigowlspets.ca to find your nearest Big Owl store, and make sure you go in and visit and see all the new exciting stuff we have, and all the people there will be happy to talk with you and answer more of your questions. If you are shopping online on bigowlspets.com, we have 10% off power filters, so make sure you guys go and check that out. Maybe you'll find something you like. And of course, like I mentioned, all the new underwater treasure decorations. So again, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Thomas and Chi for being here to answer all the questions today.
Yeah, and Hank, who is still not running around the house, by the way.
He's a real docile little guy. Remember to tell your mom that, okay? So thanks everyone, guys. Really keep track of our YouTube channel and everything. We'll keep you updated on these Q&As in the future, all right? Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Keep on tanking.
Keep on tanking.
So I've kept fish, birds, I've kept cats, dogs.
I have a cat and a dog, and they're really, really cute.
I have an aquarium full of guppies.
Cats, we've had lizards, fish, I've owned rabbits.
Various types of rodents, lots of different types of reptiles.
A bearded dragon, obviously. His name's Hank. I have 2 cats.
I've got a cat and I have 2 crown-tailed betta fish.
I have 2 Shiba Inus. They're extremely cute, but they're a handful.
My girlfriend and I have a Yorkie, a Pomeranian, and 2 Shih Tzus.
Well, I keep a variety of African cichlids.
I have a 3-year-old German Shepherd named TJ. He is the best companion I could ever ask for.
I've kept corals, I've kept all kinds of invertebrates, freshwater, saltwater.
I have a saltwater aquarium, and my favorite fish is my chevron tank.
You name it, I've probably given it a home, at the dismay of my parents and or wife at this point.
Choose from over 21,000 products for your fish, reptiles,
Dogs, cats.
Birds and other small pets.
Shipped directly to your doorstep.
And when you need help, we're here for you.
In so many ways.
Call or email us.
Connect with us on social media.
Join our live Q&A sessions and you can talk with our experts face to face.
And check out our weekly YouTube videos.
On Big Al's Video on Demand.
Ask us, we want to help you.
Bring us home.
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 Bring us home.